What's up, my fellow emo, pop, punk, metalcore music lovers? Matrix here, and you were locked into the Matrix Music Review Podcast, the only place to get your alt-rock scene music fix, and the best place to find your new favorite band. We are back. I know it's been a couple of weeks, but I've been out of town for some work-related stuff, been traveling all around, doing a bunch of different shows, so been a minute since I've been able to sit down and record some podcasts, but I got a lot of stuff to record today, so I'm actually going to break this up into 3 separate podcasts over the past couple of weeks and the albums that have been dropped, because let's face it, we got a lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of albums to talk about. Some of our scene staples have released new albums, and we got to look at those. We got some new up-and-comers that have dropped some serious heat recently, so I can't wait to get into that for you. As always, the link to everything you need from me is in the description of this episode. Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Matrix Music Review. Head on over to Spotify and save our playlist, Control-Alt-Save 25. That's where you can get up to date with all the music I'm listening to, everything you hear on this podcast, and some of the other things that I've been listening to lately. There's been a bunch of new music dropping recently, so go check that out. If you're listening on Apple Music or Spotify, leave a 5-star review, leave me a comment, let me know how I'm doing with this. And make sure you head on over to YouTube and subscribe to the YouTube channel. As I've said before, right now it is just the audio versions of these podcasts, but as we get into the summer months and I start going to bigger shows and festivals and things like that, love to be able to get some video content out there for you guys, but I got to get some subscribers over there or I can't really do anything with that. So head on over to YouTube and subscribe if you can. With that, we're jumping right into our reviews with New Delhi from Bloodywood. This is Bloodywood's second studio album, and they are an Indian metalcore outfit, and this album is only 8 tracks, but I think when I look at this album, the first word that comes to mind is explosive. These dudes have some of the most unique choruses and some of the best sound in the scene right now. We have that traditional instrumentation that we hear in a lot of Indian music, the dol, the tumbi, and others that make this just such a must listen because it's something different. You know, I feel like sometimes in the metalcore scene we can get kind of stale and we can feel like every band starts to sound like each other. If you have that feeling, go pick up Bloodywood's new album. I'm telling you, you won't be disappointed with what you hear in this. They have such a distinct guitar sound that's evident almost immediately, and it's not necessarily that it's always a high tempo sound either, but specifically on Hut, like you get this driving guitar and you can really feel the energy that Bloodywood's putting behind all of these tracks. Dadak is another one of those energetic tracks which really stands for beating or heartbeat, and the line in there is float like a butterfly, sting like a motherfucking dadak. And then you have to think about, all right, what does that mean? Because there is a blend of English and then also other languages in this. So it's hard for me as a reviewer to necessarily know what all of these lyrics mean, but I tried to at least look up the titles of the song so that I can at least somewhat know what I'm talking about here. And I thought it was very interesting that we had a baby metal feature on a song like Bake Off. Now, I know that these two bands are going on tour with each other later this year, and I'm really excited to see if I can get out to check that tour out. But Bake Off in particular is something that stood out to me as a music fan and as an anime fan, because when I hear this fusion of baby metal and Bloodywood, the first thing that comes to my mind is this song Bake Off needs to be in like a solo leveling fight scene, or it needs to be an intro for a new series. There is just something about this track that really captures the essence of both of these artists and blends them so perfectly together that it makes it this almost perfect song. And the end of this album has some serious heat behind it with songs like Kismat, which has tempo changes, raps, and there's not some overwhelming instrumentation in here, but it just, everything hits so perfectly and they've produced it so perfectly together that it just makes it work so well. Tottica is obviously one of my favorite tracks of the year so far. And I had to laugh because when I first heard the intro to Tottica, it sounded a little bit like the intro to Two Worlds from Tarzan. And I don't know if that's just maybe me. And then it just blasts right into this song, which is kind of the same way that track does too. But it just has the same kind of feel and that same kind of power behind it. And I think that everybody at this point is familiar with New Delhi, as that was kind of the viral hit for them that kind of put them on the radar of everyone. And New Delhi is just an absolute banger. There's no other way to describe that track other than it's a banger. You can't resist it. It is infectious, and so is most of this album. And it's hard to keep the energy and the consistency along 8 tracks and finish your album with 8 tracks and not really have any blemishes to it. I mean, this wasn't a debut album. These guys have been out for a little bit, and being that this is a sophomore album, throwing 8 tracks at us that all have this energy and this perfect production and tempo changes and raps and screams and all these different things that work so well together, there's no other thing for me to do than to give this a 10 out of 10. This was one of my most anticipated albums of the year coming in, and it delivered beyond belief. This was a fantastic album. I'm really excited to see what Bloodywood continues to do in the future, and especially now being out on tour with Baby Metal and Black Veil Brides. I think the sky is the limit for these guys, and I can't wait to see what happens. So if you haven't heard it yet, go check out New Delhi by Bloodywood. Next up, we have the new EP from Set for Tomorrow called Arcs. This is a Virginia metal band, and for me, they kind of have this Plotting You sound. And even though there were only really 2 new tracks on this EP that we haven't heard yet or haven't been released as singles, I think that they all work really well together. When you start off this EP with a song like Over, it starts it off super strong, and then it flows into a song called Doom and Gloom, and it has this really cool scream in it, and it's a scream where they say, "Wine for fun," and it's just done in such a different way that really adds to that track and adds to this band's variation so much, and I think it's a great choice to do something like that on a track early in your EP. And the variation is something that Set for Tomorrow does, I think, somewhat better than just about any other band out there right now. And what I mean by variation is we go from melodic singing to screaming and then different variations of your screams, and it all blends and balances so well. Impulse is a track that works perfectly for that kind of variation. You can hear all of the different pieces of that. And I think Impulse is a really proper name for that track because everything in that track vocally feels very impulsive. It feels like if they're going to scream, it's just because they feel like they need to scream, or if they need to adjust the scream and do it a different way. It's all very impulsive. So I think whether or not they intended it that way, I think it was a beautiful naming choice for that particular track. And I think that's really, for me, what this EP cemented for me is that Set for Tomorrow has this perfect blending, this perfect variation. They do melodic singing, they do classical screams, they have some snarls, they have some grit behind it. And overall, it just produces a really solid EP. I think that Set for Tomorrow had one of my favorite EPs last year too. So they're on a really good run right now. And I think this EP for me is a 4.5 out of 5. I think this is really, really strong. And if you haven't heard it yet, go check out Arcs by Set for Tomorrow. And the last album for this episode is Big Ol' Album, Volume 1 by A Day to Remember. This is A Day to Remember's 8th studio album, and it was originally released on vinyl like last month, I think. And I think that's an interesting concept that I wanted to talk about really quickly because it definitely promotes people going out and buying an album on vinyl so that they can have it ahead of time. It was about 3 or 4 weeks ahead of the release on Spotify. And yeah, we got singles like LeBron and things like that, but to be able to have an album ahead of time and get a feel for it before it even hits streaming services is really something that I'm wondering if we'll see more bands do. Bands are always looking for ways to get their music out there to more people and in different ways. And I think A Day to Remember definitely has kind of sparked this conversation of, okay, should we release an album on vinyl or a special edition CD before we release it on Spotify and see kind of what that does to album sales? I will be very interested to see if other bands utilize this and use this method, because I know for me, I was not going to buy this vinyl just to be able to get a review out early. And I think for me, it was because I didn't know what I was going to get with this. I didn't know what version of A Day to Remember I was going to hear on this album. And I didn't want to spend, $40-$50 on a vinyl that I may not really want or I may not really appreciate. But moving into the album itself, it starts out with 2 of the singles, and they're just kind of okay for me. The singles were not something that really stood out all that much. I definitely was not a big fan of Feedback. It just felt very commercialized to me. And one of the tracks on this album that kind of irritates me, but I can't help but like it, is All My Friends. I should not like this track as much as I do, but it's so fucking catchy, it's so hooky, and it just gets stuck in your head. And it just feels like one of those songs that as a reviewer I'm supposed to shit on, but I can't help it. I don't really think that's what's going to happen here, and that's going to be one that's on the playlist. So All My Friends is probably my favorite track off of this record. To the Death feels a lot more like the A Day to Remember I know. We get more grit, we get more screams, and we get this soft leave you with something genuine and then blast into a fuck you scream, then breakdown. And that's the Day to Remember that I love, where we have that grit and we have that passion behind it. And then we move into a track called Flowers, and Flowers to me is just kind of like the ultimate we've grown up track, because we're talking about how you need to tell people what they mean to you and you need to live in the moment, and you don't necessarily know that they're a good day when you're having them because you miss them a lot when they're gone. And that's definitely a real ass thing. When you're experiencing something, you always look back and you're like, man, that was a good day. I didn't think about how good of a day that was. And to me, that's just something that hits home as, we are all getting older and things like that. We always reminisce on the good days and reminisce on the good times and looking back and can we go back and all those different things. And it was really funny for me because this track itself had a line in there that says, respect earns respect. And I had to chuckle because basically we've gone from disrespect your surroundings to respect earns respect. And that's just the ultimate sign that we have grown up and that we have moved into the next phase of our lives. And I think that's, for me, with A Day to Remember, what I'm seeing is that there is maturation on this record. And that's where you can kind of see the poppier production too, on tracks like Feedback, on tracks like Die For Me. And even though the poppier production is there, I still feel like because it's in a more mature way and we're not trying to stick to some of the other things that we used to do, I think it's still okay. Overall, for me, this record is fine. I mean, there's nothing so offensive in it that really, makes me put it down in the bottom tier. But there's also no super highlight moments that really make this album anything other than like a 7 out of 10 for me. What it does do is it sets up a very interesting volume 2 for me. And I don't know if we're getting that this year or at the beginning of next year. I feel like we said we're getting it at the end of this year, but it does set up a very interesting volume 2 because I'm not quite sure what they're going to do, because this record was very much a blend of old and new, with the new probably being 75% of this album. And I'll be curious if the other album is just the exact same. So looking forward to seeing that. Let me know what you think about this album. Big Ol' Album Volume 1 by A Day to Remember. That wraps it up for reviews on this episode, but there's one thing that we gotta talk about before we end this episode, and I'm gonna do a little something on each one, hopefully, at the end to just kind of spark some conversation. And this one, we're going to talk about Sleep Token. The new singles are phenomenal, Emergence and Caramel. Both are exactly what I would expect from Sleep Token in terms of being different, being weird, being new, being fresh. And then we get into their tour that they announced. I don't know about any of you guys, but if you tried to get tickets, it was on par with Taylor Swift, Beyonce, those types of ticket queues where good fucking luck, you're not getting shit. And if you do, you're getting upper level nosebleeds for double the price that you should. And this is really a tough thing for music fans because bands like Sleep Token don't come around very often in terms of their talent, in terms of their appeal. And so to really not have access to affordable ways to see them live is super frustrating. I mean, the average fan is not going to go out there and spend $200 for 300 level seats at an arena and then also have to pay for hotels and pay for travel and all these other things. It's just not going to work. And I know that a lot of this isn't necessarily the band's fault at all, but there's got to be a better way to do this. Like, there's got to be a better way for people to have access to tickets at an affordable price. There's got to be a better way to make sure tickets are getting into the hands of people that actually want to go see the band and not just trying to make money off of it. So, you know, it was a frustrating thing for me. I will be honest. I do not have tickets to see Sleep Token at this point. And it's for all those reasons above. I'm not going to spend that much money, especially knowing that they're not in a town near me. I'm going to have to travel for this. So it's definitely frustrating. It's definitely tough if you don't get tickets in like a pre-sale setting. So let me know what you guys think about this whole issue. Let me know what you think about the way that Sleep Token went about this tour, and if you got tickets to see them, and if so, how hard was it for you to get those tickets? Was it a battle? So that's where I'm going to end this episode here. Stay tuned. You guys are getting 3 new episodes this week. We have got a ton of more music to talk about, and I cannot wait to get into some more album reviews with you guys. So I will see you very soon.